Nandana Braja Janarandana Yasoda Nandana Braja Janarandana Yasoda Nandana Braja Janarandana Yasoda Nandana Braja Janarandana Yamuna Tira Vandachari Yamuna Tira Vandachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Hare Hare Bo, Hare Bo, Hare Bo, Hare Bo, Nitai Gaur, Hare Bo. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajaka Astota Sarasat SriSrimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajaka Astota Sarasat SriSrimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Gauda Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Srila Narottam Das Thakur Avirbhava Titi Ki Jai. Srila Narottam Das Thakur Avirbhava Titi Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So today, as you know, is the special appearance day of Srila Narottam Das Thakur. And I thought we would start with just the CC Adi 1-2, which is a nice prayer. And there's no purport, so I'm not going to disrespect my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, by commenting on this. But I will read some very fascinating stories about Narottam Das Thakur. And I need someone to translate. Is someone going to translate for me? Because I'll just read a little and then somebody can translate from English. No? Can I just speak in English? That's okay? Everybody's all right with that? Somebody can do? Oh. Okay. So I should read a little and stop. Okay. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. All right. CC Adi LIla 1-2. Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityanando Sahodito Godadaye Pushpavanto Chitro San Daho Tamo Nudho Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityanando Sahodito Nityanando Sahodito Hododaye Pushpavanto Hododaye Pushpanvanto Chitro Sandho Tamonudho Chitro Sandho Tamonudho. You want to chant? Vande Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Godaye Pushpavananto Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Godayonai Pushpavantam Chitro Sando Tamomudo. Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityanandam Sahodito Chitro Sando Tamomudo. Vande. I offer respectful obeisances. Sri Krishna Chaitanya. To Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Nityanando. And to Lord Nityananda. Saha Udito. Simultaneously arisen. Goda Udaye. On the eastern horizon of Gauda. Pushpavanto. The sun and the moon together. Chitro. Wonderful. Samdao. Bestowing benediction. Tamaha Nudhao. Dissipating darkness. Translation. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Sri Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, who are like the sun and the moon. They have arisen simultaneously on the horizon of Gauda to dissipate the darkness of ignorance and thus wonderfully bestow benediction upon all. Now, because there is no purport, I wanted to discuss with you all about the pastimes of Srila Narottam Das Thakur. And there are many books written about the great acharyas, many books written by the great acharyas. And Srila Narottam Das Thakur was a later acharya after the disappearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for which he lamented his entire life, the fact that he was not physically present at the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Much like many devotees today feel the same mood, that they feel lost because they were not physically present when Srila Prabhupada was here. But Srila Prabhupada points out that there is no loss. But Narottam Das Thakur, he felt that separation and that loss at the highest stage of devotional practice. And he was always absorbed in that fact that he was not physically present. So he spent his life learning and then ultimately teaching that mood of separation, of vipralambha seva, of serving in separation, being able to serve the Lord even though he's not personally present here. So this pastime begins even before the appearance of Srila Narottam Das Thakur. As usual, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Panchatattva would travel around Gauda Desh. They would travel from village to village, performing Sankirtan. And one day, every day, in the morning, they were chanting along the byways, the beaches, towns and villages. And right in the middle of the Harinam Sankirtan, Lord Chaitanya stopped, which was very unusual. So this book, The Glorious Life of Srila Narottam Das Thakur, is put together by one of my dear God sisters, Sitala. Sitala Dasi has spent, this book took 25 years. And there's only one in Bombay that I know of, and it's in your library. So you're more than welcome to go up there and borrow it. You can take it out and you can read the whole thing. And it's written in a different style, because most of the Vedic scriptures are written according to standard practice of focusing on the content, focusing on the teachings, focusing on the acharyas, not necessarily focusing on chronology. This happened this time and that happened that time, all in order. In the West, the mentality is quite different. They like to have things chronological. They like to have things flowing in an easy to understand way. But the Srimad Bhagavatam is a perfect example of that, right? Most of those pastimes come from different times, different yugas, different millenniums, different planets, but they're all focused on one thing, and that's the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Mataji wanted to create a more flowing storyline that would be easier for people to appreciate the pastimes of Narottam Das Thakur and how they unfolded and impacted not only his life, but the lives of tens of thousands and millions of Vaishnavas around the world. So she starts off with this really nice prayer. Shri Krishna Namamrita Varshivaktra Chandra Prabhadvasta Tamo Baraya Gauranga Devanu Charaya Tasmai Namo Namaha Srila Narottamaya. I repeatedly offer my respectful obeisances to Srila Narottam Das Thakur, a pure-hearted servant of Lord Gauranga. From his splendorous moon-like lips pours a radiant shower of nectar in the form of Sri Krishna's holy name that dissipates the darkness of ignorance. And that is from the Narottam Prabhur Ashtaka, verse number 1. So, like I was mentioning about the Sankirtan party of Lord Chaitanya that just stopped. Suddenly, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stopped dancing, standing motionless. He stared intently into the distance and fervently, that means really strongly. There's a lot of difficult, crazy words in English, so I don't understand a lot of them either, so I'll have to repeat them for you. Okay, he called, Narottam, Narottam. His body trembled and tears poured from his eyes with uncontrollable force. Overwhelmed with ecstatic love, he grabbed onto Nityananda Prabhu for support. But he then collapsed to the ground and rolled in the dust, crying again and again, Narottam, Narottam. Bewildered by the Lord's sudden outburst, the devotees stopped singing. Glancing at each other with uncertainty, they gathered around the Lord and softly sang the holy names, waiting for his ecstatic trance to abate. Kneeling down beside him, Lord Nityananda whispered sweet pacifying words in the Lord's ear. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, however, simply threw his arms around Nityananda's neck and continued to cry. They were worried. Sri Nityananda Prabhu turned to Vakreshwar and Haridas. I've never seen him shed so many tears. So hoping to revive the Lord, Vakreshwar led the devotees in loudly chanting the names of Lord Jagannath. Hearing this, the Lord regained his composure, and sitting up, he wiped the tears from his eyes and motioned to Nityananda Prabhu to come closer, which he did. As he bent down, he said, Nitai, he whispered, Nitai, you know that Sankirtan is everything to me. It is my very life. I want everyone in this world to taste the nectar of the holy name. But soon, you and I will leave this world. Who will spread the chanting after we are gone? Who will keep the flame of love that I have brought into the world burning? Before I leave, I must empower someone to carry on this wonderful Sankirtan movement. I have such a wealth of love of God, I must leave it with someone. But who is qualified to inherit such riches? Lord Nityananda replied, My Lord, you know everything. Only you can answer that question. Is there anyone capable of carrying on your Sankirtan mission? Who is worthy of it inheriting your love? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, Yes, Nitai, there is someone. His name is Narottam. Lord Nityananda responded, Narottam? Who is this Narottam? I have not found any Narottam in the association of all your devotees. Lord Chaitanya replied, Narottam has not yet appeared in this world, but soon he will take birth nearby on the other side of the Padmavati River in the town of Keturi. Narottam will be such a wonderful devotee that every word coming from his mouth will be filled with love of God. And anyone who sings his praises will certainly attain love of God. If I leave my love with him, it is certain that the nectarian ocean of Sankirtan will continue to flood the universe. Puzzled, Lord Nityananda inquired, but if Narottam has not yet been born, then how will you give him your love? Good question. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, Tomorrow I will enter the Padmavati River and I will deposit my love for Narottam to receive it in the future. And at the appropriate time, you must guide Narottam to the riverbank to collect the divine treasure that awaits him. Then the Lord stood up and began chanting again. So this was the prediction of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, that he will empower a special person. Srila Prabhupada explains that there's different types of avatars. So a Shaktivesh avatar is a specially empowered avatar. Srila Narottam Das Thakur took his birth in a very unique way. Said, where did I get that one here? Page 2 and 3. there is. So in the village of Keturi, there was a king, Krishnananda, and his queen, and they were praying for a child, but they were quite elderly, but not past having children, but they wanted a child, a son. Everybody wants a son, especially here in India. And but they had no issue. So they were quite surprised when the king, one day he heard an omen in the sky that said, "You will have a great son who will be a great preacher and will chant the Lord's holy name throughout the world." And he looked all over to find out where that voice was coming from. He couldn't figure out where that came from. So he just let it go. And then the next morning, his wife came to him and told him, "I had a dream. And in that dream, the most effulgent, beautiful baby boy entered my womb from you. What does it mean?" And the kings thought, "Oh, this must be another omen. Maybe the first omen is true. There will be a great personality taking birth in my family, and I will have a son." So he became overwhelmed with the idea. And that eventually played out, and she became pregnant with a child. And the child was born. Very unique child, very dark, beautiful features, long ears, beautiful lotus eyes. And they were completely captivated by this child, of course. And then it was time, of course, to have the astrological chart done. So they called for the pundits, the astrologers. And the astrologers came. And the astrologers came, and of course, when they calculated the child's horoscope, based on the Vedic astrology, they could confirm, oh yes, this is a very special child. He will do amazing things, and he will be a great follower of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then they were all positive, except one. There was one astrologer came and he said, "Beware. Do not let your son go near the river." So no, that's very strange. So being a king and being a father, wanting to protect his son, so he remembered that. So he kept very close attention to his son. And they wouldn't let they call him Naru, they wouldn't let Narottam go near the river. And he told all the guards and the servants, don't let him go near the river. So they didn't. So one day, as he was getting older, he could freely walk around the village with servants and guards, so on. And as he would walk around the village, many times different pundits and yogis and holy men would come through the village. And they would go to the village square and they would sit down and speak. Well, the young Narottam, he became very attached to hearing what they had to say of news from outside his village, from Gaudadesh, from Jagannath Puri. He was quite fascinated about these different tales. So one day, this very, very old devotee, Krishnadas Babiji, came through Keturi in the village and was sitting, talking. And little Narottam was there, and he sat down and he became totally enraptured. And he wanted to hear absolutely everything that Krishnadas Babiji had to say about Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, but particularly about Gauranga. So that, the first thing that Maharaj Babaji, Krishnadas Babaji told him was that, unfortunately, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not physically present on the planet. But there is a way that you can see him, but not with these eyes. You have to develop Premanjana Churita Bhakti Valochanena. You have to develop, as you get older, the salve of love for Lord Chaitanya. And with those Premanjana, you will be able to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then this, of course, was quite an unusual idea for the young lad, but he accepted that. And then Krishnadas told him about Vrindavan, started to explain to him a little bit about Vrindavan. Explained to him that when he gets older, you should go to Vrindavan. And then he told him a story about Lokanath Goswami. And Lokanath Goswami was also from a kingly family, rich family, lived a life of wealth and prosperity, and had the usual things that a prince would have, private tutors and so on and so forth, and began studying mundane matters. Prabhupada calls them pounds, shilling, pence, always about how to make money, how to rule the kingdom. And he got Lokanath Goswami, he kind of became a little disinterested in all those things. Much like who? Much like Prahlad Maharaj, right? Not interested in that. So, Krishnadas Babaji explained to him that Lokanath Goswami, when he got a little older, he just decided to not go to school. At least he didn't want to take those studies anymore. So he left. He left home and he went to Vrindavan, and he's still there, and he's a great saintly person, and he has many things to teach you about Gauranga. So when you get a little older, Narottam, maybe you should go and see him. So Narottam was pretty excited about the idea. So that night, he couldn't get that idea out of his head. He kept thinking about, wow, I should leave home. Matter of fact, he was so excited that when he got together with his father and mother, the king and the queen, he said to him, hey mom, hey dad, let's go to Vrindavan. You should quit this palace. You should quit this business. Let's just pack up everything and go to Vrindavan. Of course, the king and the queen were not very keen on that idea. But he was very enthusiastic about the idea. So that night he had a dream. And in the dream, Lord Nityananda came to him and told him, you should go down to the river tonight, right now. And of course, remember, that's what Lord Chaitanya asked Lord Nityananda to do. When the time is right, I want you to look after Shuddha Narottam and send him down to the river. So he woke up and he realized that this is a message. But he was in his room, but there's bars on the windows and the door's locked and there's a guard outside, you know. He's on lockdown, like other times that happens. Anyway, he squeezed through the bars of the window and climbed down the water pipes that run water off the roof and down to the ground. So he shinnied down the water pipes to the ground and immediately ran like crazy towards the river, and all the while chanting Gauranga's name. Gauranga, Gauranga, Gauranga. Yeah, I like that. Thank you. But he had to do it a little quietly because he didn't want to disturb the guards, who, funny as it is, were kind of sleeping on their post. Now, that also happens in other Leelas, doesn't it? So they were kind of tired and they were sleepy. So he was running, but he was chanting quietly. And when he got to the river, he paid his obeisances to the river, of course. And he stepped into the river. And when he did so, the same phenomenon happened that happened earlier when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stepped into the river to deposit his love for Narottam to receive later. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stepped into the Padmavati River, the river began to boil and rise up more and more and more and more, over-flooded the banks in ecstasy. The river became ecstatic that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had entered the river. And as the river rose up, a beautiful form showed up in front of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it was Padmavati Devi, the deity of the river. And she asked, "How can I serve you, my Lord? I'm so happy. As you can see, the waters are overflooding the land. We are so ecstatic that you have come to our river. But how can I serve you? What can I do?" Lord Chaitanya told Padmavati Devi, "I'm going to entrust you with my love. I want you to keep it sacred, keep it secure in your presence in the river. And in due course of time, someone will come and he will be the recipient of that love, and you must pass that on to him." Well, she said, how will I know who this person is? What will he look like? What is his name? And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, his name is Narottam, and he will be a beautiful young boy, and you will be able to tell if he's the right child or not, the right young boy or not, because you will experience the same exact ecstatic feelings that you have now, because I am standing in your river. You will again experience that when he comes to the river. So she was ready for that. So Lord Nityananda fulfilled his promise and told Narottam, "Go down to the river right now. Don't wait till the morning. Don't wait for Mangalarti, Brahma Muhurta. Don't worry, it's dark. Go." So he did. As he stepped into the river, it boiled over. It overflowed onto the banks, and within a few minutes, the same beautiful Padmavati Devi appeared before the young Narottam. recognizing that he had so much Krishna bhakti, love for God, love for Gauranga in his heart, that even before being fully trained up, he was already empowered by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But now it was her duty to give him the exclusive power to spread Krishna consciousness through the Sankirtan movement. As a matter of fact, Lord Chaitanya instructed him that he wanted him to create a new Sankirtan movement, a different type of Sankirtan than what they were practicing in Jagannath Puri and Gaudadesh, chanting, congregational chanting, in Nagar Sankirtan. But he wanted him to distribute the message of the Vaishnavas, message of the Goswamis. So when the young boy stepped into the river, Padmavati Devi gave him Lord Chaitanya's love. Not her directly, but what happened was her vision changed into a beautiful golden form, and that golden form came to and merged with Narottam, and Narottam completely changed. His beautiful dark complexion changed to golden, and he became a beautiful color, and his eyes, all his physical features changed, and of course his consciousness completely changed. So that love for Gauranga that he was already developing became overwhelming. And now he just could not stop chanting Krishna's holy name, chanting Gauranga's holy name. So he snuck back. The sun came up, and the parents were wondering, where's my kid? Where's Narottam? Where's Naru? Couldn't find him. Finally, they found this similar looking child down by the river, but Naru wasn't allowed to go down to the river. It couldn't be him. Well, they went and checked, and sure enough, well, it looked like him, but what happened to his skin? His skin is all different. He's not dark complexion anymore. Now he's golden and shimmering, and he's talking all kinds of crazy nonsense, and tears are popping out of his eyes. We better go and put him to bed. So they brought him back to the palace, and they put him to bed. And then the king told, an eye on the clock. Then the king told everybody that, okay, we have to keep him here. There's something wrong with him. We have to call the physician. He's always chanting, Gauranga, Gauranga, Gauranga. So they thought, oh, they must have something wrong with this lad. So they called for the physicians, and they said, we can't find anything physically wrong with him. It must be some mental disorder or something like that. So they put more guards and locked up everything so he surely wouldn't get away. But Srila Narottam was totally absorbed in the concept of getting out, because he remembers about Lokanath Goswami. Well, he escaped. Surely I can figure out some way of escaping. So he was thinking all this while in his room, locked up, and then a message came that the Nawab at the time was under Muslim jurisdiction. So there was a Nawab in charge of all the different little kingdoms. And so the Nawab had heard stories of this young Narottam, what happened in the river and how it changed and became like a madman at such an early age. And they said, well, I want to meet him. So the king the Nawab sent a entourage to bring Narottam back to his capital. But the king didn't want to let him go. He said, no, he has to stay here. He said, no, I'll look after him, don't worry. And he said, well, the king said, well, I'm going to send more troops, more men, more guards. You make sure you don't lose him anymore. I can't lose him again. But what happened, of course, Narottam, he heard this and he thought, aha, this will be my chance to escape. I'll get out of this room and I'll escape from those guys and I'll go straight to Vrindavan. So as it would happen, he was allowed to go because the king figured he was really protected. So he was allowed to go. And he went with the king, the Nawab's entourage, and they went through different forests, and as they were going along, it's a long journey. And then one night, he woke up early, earlier than everyone else, and realized that this is his chance. So he snuck away from the camp, and he started running and running and running for hours and hours towards Vrindavan. He ran and ran, he ran and he ran for 2 months. Of course, he would stop and take rest. But he was so focused on seeing Vrindavan and meeting Lokanath Goswami that he just could not stop running. And he would go through many villages and people would stop him and ask him, well, who are you? And where are you going? And would you like to stay here and take rest? We have a little guest house. You can stay and we'll give you some nice prasad. No! I have to get to Vrindavan. I don't want to sleep. I don't want to eat. I have to go to Vrindavan. I have to meet a guru. I have to find out about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So the villagers they would offer him a few things and he would carry on his way. Well, that went on for 2 months. After 2 months, he finally gets to Vrindavan. And he's so ecstatic to start meeting some of the devotees. But he couldn't find Lokanath Goswami. So he toured all different places in Vrindavan, met lots of devotees, went to different temples. And then finally, he did meet him. And he fell down at his lotus feet and said, you are my master. Just don't forget, he's just a young boy still, right? You are my master. I want to take initiation from you. Well, Lokanath Goswami had no disciples. He refused to accept disciples. He did not want any disciples. Nadanam najanam nasundarim bhagijam tadikishkamaye manajanmani janmani ishvare. I don't want. So he never took. Like our Gaur-Kishore Das Babaji and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj. So many times Bhaktisiddhanta had to ask Gaur-Kishore, please give me initiation. I'll do whatever you want. I'm your servant. I'm your slave. I think 17 times Bhaktisiddhanta asked him. So the same thing with Narottam Das Thakur. Many times he tried many different sevas. And over the course of several weeks, he noticed that there were a lot of people wanted to take initiation from Lokanath Goswami. So they were engaging in different sevas. Some would make garlands, some would cook for him, some would clean his bhajan kutir. They would take him on pilgrimages, so on. But Narottam Das noticed that there was one thing that no one was doing. So at night, he would sneak away while everyone was sleeping, and he would go to the place where Lokanath Goswami would pass stool and urine, and he would take that lota and he would clean it like anything, so it was nice and clean in the morning for Lokanath Maharaj. But he wouldn't tell anybody, and then he'd go back to bed. So after several weeks, finally, Lokanath noticed who it was, because he went there a little different time. And he noticed that it was Narottam. And he was so astonished that someone would be so dedicated and so keen on taking initiation that they would clean my lota for the bathroom every night when no one else was around. And he came to Narottam and he told him, "You have stolen my heart. Your devotion and dedication is unparalleled. Therefore, I grant you your wish, and I will accept you as a disciple. And from henceforward, you can be called Srila Narottam Das Thakur Ki Jai." Then some years went by, and then he was entrusted with an amazing task. Lokanath Goswami had been placed in charge of the writings of the 6 Goswamis. So Srila Rupa Sanatana Goswami, Jiva Goswamis, Gopal Bhatta Das Goswamis, they had written amazing volumes of books. No printing press, right? All palm, leaf, hand written. That's all they did. They would write. They would write different books about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, about Lord Krishna and his pastimes. And each one had the unique flavor, and they never kind of overlapped, right? It was the standard that if one acharya was writing about a particular topic, that another acharya would not supersede that. They would not write over that. They would focus on a different area. Like when Krishnadas Babaji writes Chaitanya Charitamrita, many times he refers to that. That he says, well, this topic was already spoken by previous acharyas, so I'm not going to discuss that, but I'll tell you these things. So this respect that they had made the collection of books that the 6 Goswamis had entrusted to Lokanath Goswami was massive. Was a massive collection of books. There was no cell phones and no digital things, right? Everything was written. There was a huge pile of books. So Lokanath Maharaj Goswami asked if Narottam Das Thakur would please take these books and distribute them from Vrindavan all the way to Gaudadesh, all the way to Mayapur, along the way. But not just distribute them, have them copied. So make copies of the books and distribute, much like our Srila Prabhupada is doing, much like you are doing, distributing copies of the most amazing books that Srila Prabhupada has given us. And those copies have the same potency as the original books. That's why there are so many of you here now. That's why I am here. Because one book, it only takes one book. Prabhupada says, one sentence, one shloka from one of those books, from one of his teachings. That's all it takes to become fully Krishna conscious and begin your true Krishna conscious path of understanding who you really are and what is our purpose in life and why are we here. So Narottam Das Thakur was entrusted with moving these books. He was so excited. And Lokanath Goswami had the king build a huge cart and horses to pull the cart. And they would chant along beside the cart. So they were so excited in the morning to get on the journey. They woke up in the morning and everybody was in the village was in complete anxiety. Say, why is everybody in anxiety? This is a great day. We're taking all these beautiful books to distribute all across India. And they said, no, someone has stolen all the books. What? That's not possible. They're all here, locked up. No, someone has come in the night and has stolen every single book, has stolen all the books. It was a great calamity. Oh my God, this is like the worst thing ever. He had wanted so strongly to engage in this seva for his spiritual master. He really wanted to do this seva, but he couldn't because the books were stolen. So there was some idea that there was some envious king. Well, the story got out that these three young devotees were going to be traveling with a cartload of the most valuable treasure you could imagine. Well, of course, the greedy, mundane king from the next door, he thought, aha. So he ended up, they discovered later that, yeah, he was the one who stole all the books. However, so Narottam Das was not, at the time, they were not able to figure out where the books were, but he still fulfilled his mission of going back to Keturi and preach in his village. So he traveled back there with two companions, and they began preaching in the whole village in his area, and that went on for many, many months. It takes letters a long time to get from point A to point B. But finally he got the message that the books had been found, and they were on their way, and they would be able to continue distributing these books, copying them and distributing these books all over Gaudadesh. Now, Narottam stayed in the village for a long time. When he arrived there, his parents actually hardly recognized him because his transformation was so overwhelming that he was as effulgent as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. And his focus was on Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam. He was totally focused on the concept of chanting Krishna's holy names, and therefore he started writing, and he's most well known for his amazing bhajans and kirtans that you're all familiar with, Srila Narottam Das Thakur's most amazing work. So those works are a result of his ecstasies while he was back in his village in Gaudadesh and preaching and traveling around there. So I think we have to end there, but there's more to the story. So it's all here. It's all in the CC. But this is an easy book to read. It's a big font, and it's English, but it's easy to read. It also help you maybe practice reading English. But the rest of the story is even more fascinating. So we'll have to take that up another time. Okay? Srila Narottam Das Thakur ki jai! Srila Prabhupada ki jai! All the assembled Vaishnavas ki jai! Thank you. Hare Krishna. That's great. Said 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock.